F1 2024 is just around the corner, and I'm going to be going ahead and ranking each of these liveries that have been released by all of the 10 teams, from the worst all the way up to the best. If you guys end up enjoying today's video, drop it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, and let me know what you think are the best liveries in the comment section down below, because I'm pretty sure they're going to be completely different to what mine are. So let's get straight into it. Number 10. Alpine. Right, so Alpine are number 10 on this list, and it's a real shame for Alpine because they have such a nice identity and they opted to just remove it all. Now, obviously this season and for this current era of Formula 1, we're currently going through a phase whereby carbon is used on basically every single car in order to save weight, as obviously at the moment all teams are struggling to get within the weight limit, and in order to do that they're stripping back all of the paint and removing the colour from the cars, which is really annoying, and hopefully it's something that gets addressed in the future. The problem is Alpine have gone to the absolute extreme of all of this. Now, when I first saw the car and the reveal stream, I saw obviously the pink and the BWT, I saw the blue, and then I started to see obviously the carbon bit on the nose. And I was a little bit concerned, but I felt like maybe compared to last year, they were going to smooth the carbon around a bit and just kind of make it work a bit. No, they didn't. They basically just carboned out the entirety of the car, and it's just awful. It's just so badly done. There's a way to do it, and they've not done it correctly. The blue is basically non-existent on the car. The BWT, the fact that, like, especially on the rear wing and on the side pod as well, they've got the BWT, then they've got the outline in the white, and then they've got like a tiny extra outline of the pink, basically saying, hey, by the way, BWT, the identity of it is pink, but we can't show you all of that. Just have a little bit of an outline here, just to tell us that it is definitely pink. We just don't want to use much of it. And the biggest thing that annoys me about this Alpine, apart from the fact they've literally stripped it back to bare carbon, is there is actually a nice design in there, like especially on the engine cover, where they've been given the most minimal amount of freedom possible to actually put some paintwork in there. It actually looks quite nice. And then we obviously had the reveal then of the Alpine's pink BWT special livery that they'll be using for 8 races. And it was the exact same thing, apart from the bits that were in blue were just in pink. It's a real mess. It doesn't work. It's lost all its identity. It's a bad one from the French. Number 9. Haas. Next up on this list, I've gone with Haas as number 9 in the livery rankings. And realistically, it's just because it's just boring. I just don't like the colour scheme, being perfectly honest. I think that the whole idea of the white, the black, and the red is probably a Haas thing, but the way it's just been implemented is just a bit boring to me, to be honest. There's nothing really that stands out to me and goes, yeah, it's okay. I'd say it's not the nicest Haas I've ever seen. Is it a definite upgrade on last year's Haas? Yeah, probably. But it just doesn't stand out. It's just very plain. It's just very boring. I don't mind the red being on the front nose and the rear wing. I probably would have preferred a little bit more red and a bit more white. I don't like the money and the gram on the front nose. I feel like it's just a bit, I don't know, it doesn't quite work in the same way that the Red Bull type of name is situated on the nose. It's not quite there. I've seen a lot of people actually quite like the big Haas logo across the side pod. Not actually a massive fan of that. I don't mind it, you know, covering the side pod, but I feel like it just needs to be a bit shorter. It's almost as if they've scaled it up and it's just a bit too much. The fact that it overlaps on the top of the side pod is just, it just looks a little bit messy. It's not the cleanest livery. It's not the worst, but it's just plain, it's just boring, and it's just quite a dull colour scheme palette for me. Sorry, Haas, it's going to be number 9. Number 8, Sauber. Coming in at number 8 then is obviously the Sauber. No, I'm not calling it steak, I'm not calling it kick, I'm not calling it whatever, I'm calling it Sauber. This had a potential for a very nice livery, and while it's kind of okay, it just lacked a lot of things on it. So what went wrong with this Sauber livery? Well, first things first, I don't mind it being in the carbon black, it just needed more colour on it. Now, the green, or the bright green, I actually like the bright green. I've got no problem with that at all, and it's nice to see a car that has that bright green livery. You only really ever see that when you're modding the F1 game, or like me, that green is literally my Jaguar green for my F1 journey, so perfect, win-win. But the thing that this kind of just lacks for me is how they've implemented the green. So on a front-on perspective, you see the front wing, which is in green, which is lovely. You see the front nose, which is in green, and then it spans across the side pieces then of that front nose and heading in towards the monocoque area. The front angle looks brilliant. There's one issue, though, that comes to it when you're looking at it from the front facing. The rear wing is also in green. Perfect. But then for some reason, they decided to stop it halfway, carbon out the rest of the top of the rear wing, and then write steak on there in its white colour, and then just carbon that off. For me, you would have been so much better just putting a full green across that rear wing, making it completely green, carbon out the entirety of the back of the rear wing, because no one really cares as much, and then just having a full green front rear wing, and then just putting steak on there, but just put it in black. I don't see what's too difficult about doing that. So that's kind of like my first bugbear about it. And then the second bit is how they've implemented the green on the side of the car, like on the engine cover and stuff. The fact that they've just done a silly zigzag piece across there, it's just super messy and it just doesn't look very nice at all. Realistically, it would have looked a lot better if they'd just not put any green on that side piece. It would have been a lot more boring. Don't get me wrong, but it actually would have made the design a lot more cleaner. The whole square piece on that, it's almost like you give a kid one of those pens that they use on a projector screen, and you let them draw on it for the first time, but the pen isn't calibrated properly to the screen, so they're just messing around with it, and then they put it there and they go, oh, that's all right, and then just put the pen down. That's kind of what it looks like to me. It had potential for something very, very nice. The color scheme works, the design doesn't. Number 7. Williams. Next up, I've gone with Williams, and realistically, it's mostly because, obviously, I mean, this is the launch edition, obviously, but there's literally hardly any carbon on it, so it's actually very, very nice. There's not a massive amount of sponsors on this car, and I think the way that they've put the sponsors on the side of the car are a little bit strange with the new title sponsor, Kumiyasu, or whatever it's called, and then the MyProtein that's sort of like above it, just next to the side pod inlet. That's a little bit messy. The colour scheme is nice. I like the shades of blue. I like the light blue. I like the dark blue. Blue's my favourite colour. Obviously, the silly Duracell battery on the roll hoop is just, it's clumsy. I know it's their sponsor, and I know it's a clever place to put it, considering it's the circular area. It just looks very silly and very, very bad. It's not a terrible livery. It's not an amazing livery. It's just a nice average livery. There's no carbon in there. The Williams identity is this blue. I like the bits of white that go on there as well. I like the other shades of blue. It just obviously lacks sponsors, and it's just the sponsor placement's a bit off. And again, I obviously don't like the Duracell battery on there. That's just a me thing though, so yeah, it's okay. That's literally what this Williams livery. It's just alright. Number 6, McLaren. Controversial, maybe, but I picked McLaren next on my livery list, and I don't even know what number I'm on anymore. I think I'm on number 6 or 7, something like that. I think I'm on 6 for McLaren. This is a controversial one. Why have I put them here? Now, yes, they got rid of the blue, which is absolutely okay. You know, I didn't mind the blue. I thought it was actually quite nice. The way that they put it onto the car was wrong. I feel like the way that people didn't like the blue necessarily was literally because of how it was actually put onto the car. The fact that they've been using the blue since 2018, I kind of felt like that was becoming McLaren's identity, papaya with that blue in there. And especially like their 2020 and 2021 liveries, the blue was put on there so nicely that it just looked awesome. But they obviously got rid of that, which is absolutely fine. I've got no issues with that. But to me, the livery just looks very, very bland and very plain. And I think it just needs something else. I think, obviously, I know that they've got the chrome sponsorship, but I can't get used to the chrome wheel covers. They just look bad. I'm sorry. They look really bad. I don't like them. I like that they've put the chrome for the numbers of the drivers. But if they're going to do that, maybe just add a bit of chrome into it. Like, put some chrome design in there. I know what they've tried to do. They've tried to put a bit of homage to the classic Marlboro livery when they had the red, then they had the white, and then they had the slights, and then they had the red on the back of the car. I know what they're trying to do there, but the positioning of that slat down the side, it doesn't go all the way to the bottom, and then it cuts off in the corner. If they covered the entire rear end from top of engine cover down to side pod exit point, basically, all the way across in the orange, and then had the slat, and then went up in the sort of triangular shape, then the livery would have worked so much better, but it just doesn't. And to me, that's quite annoying. And then this is just a kind of a me thing, but everything that's in the carbon black, that's obviously in the white, to be honest, I would have just changed all those white decals and just chucked them into orange. It would have looked a lot sexier, I would have thought. But, you know, that's just me. It's nice. I like the papaya. I've got nothing wrong with the papaya orange. I just feel like the removal of the blue, for me, it doesn't suit well. I know the blue and the last two liveries from McLaren haven't been great, but I feel like they actually put the blue in the wrong places to give it, and it didn't make the blue work as it has already done in the past. And if they were going to do something different, like obviously you could tell they wanted to do a little bit of a chrome homage thing, just put some chrome on the car. Like, obviously, you know, weight saving's not going to allow that, but there's a couple of things I personally would do to make it better. Number 5. Visa debit, credit, Visa, Cash App, Orlen, Red Bull, I don't know, V-Card, whatever. Next up then, I have gone with Visa debit, credit, contactless card, Formula 1, Red Bull, Team Junior, F1 thing. I don't know. It's a lovely livery. I absolutely love this livery. It's a very, very nice one. It's obviously going back in the time for Toro Rosso. There's only one issue, one massive, massive issue that I've got with this livery, is that if you're going to do a rebrand, you're going to change the team name, and you're going to do a new rebrand, why are you going back to liveries from a team name that you had 2 names ago? That's kind of where I'm a bit like, I love the livery, but I'm a bit like, well, why? Why are you doing that? It's a bit silly, but I really like the livery. I think overall the blue is lovely, the chrome is very, very nice on the car, the white is a nice touch. And the red in there also works. The only things that I've got a little bit wrong is where the monocoque is just in front of the halo and before the front nose, the white that slides downwards. I'm going to be controversial here. I'd actually rather they would have carboned that off. I think Tommy from P1 put this out here in like a tweet. I'd happily carbon that off because the way that it just cuts downwards, you'll see pictures anyway, rather than me just doing all of this and looking like I'm some sort of deformed dance instructor. The way that the line just goes down on the side profile, I'd rather they just cut that off and just do a straight square across. It would have just made that bit of the car look a lot neater. And while they obviously need to put the red on the white, I don't actually know if it's struggling to work with me, the red text I'm talking about now. I'm not talking about the red outline that goes along the outside of the white boxes. I just feel like that the actual red color is of the text for the Orlen and the Hugo Boss underneath. I don't know whether it works or not. I'm still trying to get my head around that red text, but overall it's a clean livery. It's nice, and there's not too much that I'd actually do with it. Number 4. Red Bull. Now, I've been a man in the past that has slated Red Bull for all of their boring liveries, basically being the exact same thing. But I'm kind of getting to a point now where I'm very much just used to this Red Bull style, and I've mostly been hating on the livery, more so because I want them to change the livery, not necessarily because I hate it. Now, don't get me wrong, the Infinity Red Bull from 2010 onwards, or 2009 maybe onwards, from up till 2015, I obviously prefer that scheme, especially the Red Bulls from 2012 and 2013 were my absolute favourite Red Bull liveries out there, don't get me wrong. But there's nothing to say that the Red Bull livery that they have now is not bad. And I think, you know, when we look back on classic iconic liveries, we look at the Marlboro McLaren, we look at the Vodafone McLaren, for an example. Well, I mean, the Vodafone McLaren was on the car from 2007 all the way till 2013. So there was a long time of that McLaren having the exact same livery, and it comes out as an absolute banger in the previous era, in general. I can't speak for that matter. Whereas this Red Bull, there's nothing really wrong with it. I mean, the colour scheme is the colour scheme. The livery is clean. The decals are put in, are nicely placed. And yeah, I just think it's a nice livery. I am getting used to just seeing the same Red Bull livery every single time. And it's the classic fashion of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Number 3. Aston Martin. Speaking if it isn't broke, don't fix it, we move on to Aston Martin and their livery for 2024. And realistically, they've done exactly that. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's number 3 on my list, and I think it's just, it's another classic British racing green livery. It's absolutely lovely. I really like it. The only issues that I've got with it is obviously they've just started to put a bit more carbon on the car, especially on the side pod area. It's starting to eat into the paint a little bit. Apart from that, it's a super clean livery. It's super nice. I love the colour. Obviously, I love the Aston Martin green. I like that the Aramco, the Aramco main logo piece is actually on the front of the rear wing. Obviously, last year it was on the rear bit of the rear wing, so you couldn't really see it. Obviously, I know they were Aramco and Cognizant at the same time. This time, obviously, they're just Aramco, so it actually makes sense for them to have that in there. The two things that I wish that this car had is a bit more lime green on the car. I wanted to see more of that sort of bright lime green on this car, whether it's a couple more stripes that go across. Obviously, they've done the traditional stripe that Mercedes have basically been doing since 2019, which obviously you would have seen from the stake livery. They're doing the same thing. Haas have now done the same thing. Aston copied them in 21, and I would have just seen a bit more. I know that they've put it on the engine cover. It's nice to put it there, but I just want to see a bit more of it. And apart from that, obviously, again, it's just the fact that the carbon's eating into the side pod a little bit. So, yeah, it's a very nice livery. I've got nothing wrong with it. I really like it. There's just a couple of little tweaks that I'd put in there. Number 2, Ferrari. I don't think you quite understand how difficult it was for me to pick between my top 2. But I've gone with Ferrari as number 2 as the liveries on this one. They've done basically everything nearly perfect on this Ferrari. It is an absolutely beautiful Ferrari livery. And for me personally, it is genuinely one of the best liveries that Ferrari have released in Formula 1. It really is. It's such a nice livery. But there's obviously a few little things that I obviously am not too much of a fan on, otherwise I put it at number 1. But before we go on with that, what's obviously great about the car? Well, first of all, the iconic red. The red Ferrari. That's the first thing. We love the red Ferrari on there. And they've actually gone ahead and made a couple of tweaks from last year's livery, which makes it even nicer. So first things first is where they've put the carbon on this Ferrari, they've opted to put it in the place where you are less likely to ever see the carbon on the Ferrari car, which is beautiful. Obviously, last year's just seeing, like the front wing end plate having paint on it, and then this stupid box in the middle just being carbon. It was just such a clumsy design piece. You might as well have just put the bit of paint that you put on the front wing end plate, put that on the side pod, and then just make the front wing end plate not carbon. Whereas this time around, they've actually decided to agree with us on that one. So what they've done instead is where they've gone and put the gullies in for the side pods, they've got the downwash and the little water slide in there. They've gone ahead and basically carboned the entirety of that water slide, which is perfect because unless you're looking at the Ferrari from a top-down perspective, you're never going to see that carbon there, even though it is there. So realistically, they're weight saving, but in the right way of doing it. And for me, that's absolutely perfect. I'm all cool with that. And that's the perfect way of doing it. If these teams are going to have to save weight by compromising their livery, do it right. And guess what? Ferrari did it right. They put it in the correct places. Nearly. Now, the only things that I've got, before I go on to the things that I've got wrong with this one, I also love the yellow stripe on the Ferrari. I also love the white stripe on the Ferrari, giving a bit of homage to the to the WEC livery from last year. It looks absolutely awesome, and again, I'm really happy that they put the Ferrari text on the rear wing like they did for last year. I feel like it should just stay there. It just looks beautiful, and I love it that it was there. Obviously, they first did it in the 2022 Italian Grand Prix, I think, and yeah, that should just be staying there permanently because it's just lovely. And overall, like I said, it's just such a beautiful livery. It's so clean. The way that the stripes go across the car works so well. I like the numbers. I like the colours. The carbon's been put in the right places. There's just 2 to 3 little small things that I'm not too much of a fan of. So the first thing is the red that goes across the front wing itself. So on the front wing elements, they've obviously got the top 2 flaps, which are carbon. Then the whole of the third flap is all red. And then the bottom flap is completely carbon. For me, this just makes the livery just look a little bit messy. In my personal opinion, I would have just got rid of the red on the front wing itself. Just left that all in carbon. The fact that there's just the one plane that's completely red, it just doesn't work. It just looks a little bit clumsy, in my personal opinion. I would have personally just got rid of that. And maybe I would have put that red onto the rear wing itself. Because again, while we've got the black on the rear wing, which is nice to see, with the Ferrari logo across there in the white, which worked perfectly last year. Again, you've got the first bit of the rear wing, which is black, and then you've got the bottom plane of the rear wing, which is red. And it's sort of like, I'd rather you either had one or the other. That's just my personal opinion. That's why it's obviously so high on my list, because it's like, I'd rather have one or the other. So for me, it's either I want red or I want black. Give me one or the other, basically. And the only other thing then is the wheel covers. Unfortunately, yes, I really do not like the wheel covers. They are horrifically ugly, and I would rather Ferrari have just got rid of them and, well, not got rid of the wheel covers because they have to have wheel covers, but I'd rather they just had either a red stripe going around them, kind of like Red Bull do when they've got the red, the ring that goes around it, or just, you know, done something different, like maybe just a white stripe or a white and a yellow stripe. The white and the yellow stripe and then the full red on there, I just keep looking at it and going, yeah, no, not for me, thank you. Not for me at all. Sorry, it was very close to being number 1, but those few little tiny bits, especially the wheel covers, kind of put me off. Number 1, Mercedes. And lastly, I have picked Mercedes-Benz to be my number 1 livery for 2024. It was a really, really tough decision to put between, realistically, Mercedes, Ferrari and Aston gave me a lot of work in terms of what areas I wanted to put them in terms of liveries. But for me personally, I think Mercedes is number 1. And I'm going to explain, obviously, why. For me, this Mercedes actually is probably the best livery that Mercedes has released since they returned to Formula 1 in 2010. It's absolutely gorgeous. Mercedes have finally brought back the silver, but they've kept the black in there as well. Now, every time that Mercedes have put out a tweet saying, what livery is better, silver or black? And every single time they've mentioned a livery thing of either being silver or either being in black, I've always gone out there and just said, no, scrap that, give me silver and give me black. And this time they've made it work. What makes this livery work so well is when you look at the front of the car, you're basically seeing just silver. You obviously got the carbon on the front wing, but you're seeing silver across the nose, and as it branches out to go towards the side pods, it is effectively just silver. And then you've got the black of the rear wing. The thing that makes this livery so nice for me is how well organised everything is. Mercedes' colours from now on, for me in my opinion, is silver and it is black. They are both iconic colours of Mercedes. You know, the silver obviously being of the silver arrow, but the black has become iconic because of how they made it look. You know, in 2020, as soon as they said we're racing in black for, obviously, Black Lives Matters, it was an absolute banger. Everybody loved it. Obviously, in 2021, they kept the livery black with a bit of the silver on the engine cover. Obviously, that was again silver, mostly black, but with a bit of silver. That didn't quite work too well. It was a little bit silly having just that tiny bit of the cover in silver. And obviously in 2022, they went back to full silver. For me, it was quite an ugly livery. And then last year, they went back to full black again. But what they did is they went back to black because the whole purpose of Mercedes being silver was because they took away the white paint to then go back to the titanium silver to give them then the name of the silver arrows, which is why for the 2023 livery, when they went back to black, they got rid of the silver, went back to the black carbon because they had to save weight. And as Toto Wolff kind of put it out there, you know, the colour scheme of Mercedes is black and it is silver. That is how it is. And I'm also a massive sucker for gradients. So the fact is on here, the red Ineos, also, I must say, I've grown on the red Ineos on the Mercedes. It used to not look too great, but I feel like they've been able to make the red a little bit brighter, and it works nicely, or as Mercedes like to take the mick out of it, and call it the Toto Rosso of the red on there. The gradient of the Ineos bit of the roll hoop going into the black is lovely. The gradient of the silver going into the black, beautiful. The Petronas blue, I like that they've actually changed, or Petronas green as they say it. I love that they've put the stripe in this slightly different area this time. Since 2019, we've just seen the same stripe going down the bottom of the nose and then the bottom of the side pod. But this time they've put it so it goes down the waters, down the gullies instead. It just looks lovely. The rear wing obviously nice. And overall, to me, it's just a sexy livery. It's so nice and I love everything about the livery. If there's one thing that I would have maybe done to this car is maybe just put a little bit of a design on the wheel covers. But apart from that, I would change nothing on the car. It is absolutely beautiful. And for me, it's the best livery on the grid for 2024. And it's the best livery that Mercedes have ever produced. And obviously as well, they've obviously still got the red star for Niki Lauda, which is amazing. And also the stars on the back of the engine cover. I love that they're a key thing now that Mercedes put on there. They're not too big, they're not too small, they're not too covering, and they're not too many of them. They're just there and they're neatly placed. And for me, yeah, it's the best one out of the lot. So there it is, guys. That is my ranking of the F1 2024 liveries for this season. Like I said, in the comment section down below, put your top 10 in there, because as I said, they're going to be completely different to mine. I guarantee you of that. But if you ended up enjoying today's video, drop it a like, subscribe if you're new around here as well, and I'll see you guys for the next video very, very soon. Take care all. Peace.